Sir, our mom abandoned us here.
They're our children. Mine and yours, and we're going to figure this out together.
The wind was freezing cold as it blew through the Chicago street. Thaddeus Crane walked out of the Tesla Innovation Center and pulled his gray wool coat tighter around his body, but it didn't help much against the bitter December cold. He was 41 years old, and over the years, he had learned how to shut off his feelings completely. He had to learn the skill to survive after his wife Vivian died 6 years ago. She had died while giving birth to their baby daughter, but the baby was born dead too. That terrible day had broken something inside Thaddeus that never healed. His phone kept buzzing in his hand with business reports, numbers about companies he wanted to buy, and updates about his company's stock prices. Numbers were safe. Numbers made sense. Numbers couldn't hurt him the way people could. He was looking down at his phone, reading forecasts about how much money his company would make in the next 3 months, when he heard something that made him stop walking. 3 small voices, all speaking at the same time, cutting through the quiet sound of falling snow. "Sir, our mom abandoned us here." Thaddeus stopped moving immediately. His expensive Italian leather shoes made a crunching sound in the fresh snow on the sidewalk. He looked up from his phone and saw 3 small children huddled together against the stone wall of a closed clothing store. Their tiny bodies were pressed close to each other, trying to stay warm. They looked like they were about 5 or 6 years old, maybe younger. The little girl sitting on the left side had dark hair pulled back into 2 braids. She wore a beige knit sweater that looked thin and worn. She was sitting with her back against the cold stone building, rocking her body back and forth, in a steady rhythm. Her small hands were pressed hard against her ears, and her eyes were squeezed shut tight, like she was trying to block out the whole world. The child in the middle was a boy with short black hair. He wore a blue hoodie under a brown jacket that was too big for him. He had pulled his knees up to his chest and wrapped his arms around his legs. He was saying the same words over and over again in a flat, robotic voice. "Mummy's gone, Mummy's gone, Mummy's gone." He didn't change his tone. He just kept repeating the same 2 words like a broken record. The third child, another boy, sat on the right. He had wild, curly hair that stuck out in all directions. He wore a denim jacket with holes in the elbows. His hands were moving rapidly in front of his chest, flapping up and down, faster and faster. Tears ran down his round cheeks, leaving wet tracks on his brown skin. His whole body was shaking, but his hands never stopped moving. "Please, sir," the girl with braids said. Her voice was shaking, but she kept talking even while she rocked. "We're freezing. Mummy said someone kind would help us." Thaddeus moved closer and crouched down so he was at eye level with the children. His knees pressed against the cold, wet sidewalk. The dampness immediately soaked through his expensive suit pants, but he didn't notice or care. His mind was working fast, noticing details about the children that other people might miss. The way the girl kept rocking back and forth in exactly the same rhythm. The way the boy's hands flapped without stopping. The way the other boy repeated the same words over and over in that flat tone. Thaddeus's technology company gave a lot of money to programs that helped autistic people, so he had been trained to recognize these signs. He understood immediately what he was seeing. These children were autistic. All 3 of them. "Where's your mother?" Thaddeus asked. He kept his voice very soft and gentle. He didn't make any sudden movements because he knew that might scare them. The boy in the middle didn't stop his repeating words. "Mummy's gone, Mummy's gone, Mummy's gone." "She left us," the girl with braids said. She was still rocking, but now she opened her eyes and looked at Thaddeus. Her eyes were filled with fear and confusion. She said, "We deserve better." She kissed each of us on the forehead and then she walked away into the snow. She told us to wait here and that someone kind would help us. The boy with curly hair suddenly thrust a crumpled piece of paper toward Thaddeus. His hands were shaking so badly that the paper rattled. His fingers never stopped their constant flapping movement, even while he held out the note. Thaddeus took the paper carefully from the boy's trembling hand. He unfolded it slowly. Despite the fear growing in his chest, his hands stayed steady. The note was written in handwriting that looked rushed and shaky, like someone had written it while crying. "I'm sorry. I tried so hard, but I can't do this anymore. They deserve better than a broken mother who can't give them what they need. Someone will help them. Someone has to help them. Please tell them I love them more than my own life. Tell them I'm sorry. -E. Jesus, Thaddeus whispered under his breath. His heart started pounding hard in his chest. He pulled his phone out of his pocket with one hand. With his other hand, he took off his expensive wool coat and wrapped it around the shoulders of the nearest child, the boy with the flapping hands. I'm calling for help right now, okay? You're safe. I promise you're safe now. The little girl flinched when he moved suddenly to wrap the coat around her brother, but she didn't pull away from the warmth of the heavy coat. Thaddeus dialed 911 and pressed the phone to his ear. Within just a few minutes, 2 police cars came speeding down the street toward them. Their red and blue lights flashed bright against the white snow and the dark buildings. The lights reflected off the storefront windows and bounced around everywhere. The moment the police cars got close, the boy in the middle, the one who had been repeating, "Mummy's gone," immediately put both hands over his ears and started screaming. It wasn't a normal scream. It was a raw, desperate, painful sound that seemed to come from deep inside him. The sound cut through the quiet night like a knife. His whole body started shaking violently. "Turn off the sirens," Thaddeus shouted at the police officers who were getting out of their cars. His voice was loud and commanding, the same voice he used in business meetings when he needed people to listen immediately. "They're autistic children. They have sensory processing problems. The sirens and lights are hurting them." One of the officers, a woman with kind brown eyes and dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, immediately understood. She ran back to her car and shut off the sirens. The other officer did the same. The loud wailing sound stopped, but the boy kept screaming and rocking. His hands were pressed so hard against his ears that his fingers were turning white. "Can you tell us what happened here?" Officer Martinez asked Thaddeus quietly. She spoke softly so she wouldn't upset the children more. Thaddeus quickly explained everything. How he had found the 3 children alone on the freezing sidewalk. How they told him their mother had deliberately left them. How they had given him the note. While he talked, Officer Martinez walked slowly over to the children and knelt down beside them in the snow. "Hello, sweethearts," she said in a very gentle voice. "Can you tell me your names? I need to know your names so I can help you." The girl with braids was the first one to answer. She spoke in a mechanical voice that didn't sound natural, like she was reciting facts she had memorized. "My name is Cressida Ashby. I am 5 years and 7 months old. That boy is Marlo. That boy is Dashiell. We are triplets, which means we were all born on the same day from the same mother. Our birthday is May 14th. "Thank you, Cressida," Officer Martinez said kindly. "And what is your mother's name?" "Eloan Ashby. She is 32 years old. She works at 3 different places to make money for us. She is always tired. She works during the day and at night too. Sometimes she cries in the bathroom when she thinks we can't hear her, but we can hear her." Officer Martinez's partner, a tall man with gray hair, was already typing the name into the computer in his police car. After a few seconds, he called out, "I've got information on her. Eloan Ashby, 32 years old, last address listed is in the Pilsen neighborhood. There was a wellness check request called in by her employer 2 weeks ago, but it says here it was flagged for follow-up, but nobody ever went to check on her." His face became more serious and worried. "There's more. Her credit card was just used at the Riverside Motel on Cicero Avenue. The charge came through 30 minutes ago. Send police units to that motel right now," Officer Martinez ordered into her radio. Then she turned back to look at the 3 children. "Sweethearts, do you have any other family? Do you have grandparents who live nearby? Do you have aunts or uncles? Anyone else who takes care of you?" All 3 children shook their heads no at exactly the same time, in perfect unison, like they had practiced it. "Okay," Officer Martinez said. She stood up and walked over to Thaddeus. She spoke quietly so the children wouldn't hear. "We're going to need to contact DCFS. That's the Department of Children and Family Services. They'll have to come get the children and place them in emergency foster care until we can find the mother and figure out what's going on." "No." The word came out of Thaddeus's mouth harder and sharper than he meant it to. Several of the police officers turned to look at him in surprise. He took a breath and spoke more calmly. "I mean, no, don't do that. I'll take emergency custody of them." Officer Martinez raised her eyebrows. "Mr. Crane, that's very generous, but it doesn't work that way. You're a stranger. You have no legal relationship to these children. We can't just hand them over to someone they've never met before." "I have resources," Thaddeus said quickly. His mind was racing, thinking of arguments that would convince her. My company, Crane Technologies, runs a whole division focused on neurodiversity research. We've donated millions of dollars to autism support programs. I know these children are autistic. I can see the signs. They're going to need very specialized care, not just any random foster home. I can provide that care. I can hire specialists tonight if I need to. I can make sure they have everything they need. He looked down at the 3 children. Cressida had stopped rocking. Marlowe had finally gone quiet. Dashiell's hands had stopped their frantic flapping. All 3 of them were staring up at Thaddeus with identical expressions on their small faces. It was a look of desperate hope, like he was their last chance in the world. Something deep inside Thaddeus's chest cracked open. It was a feeling he hadn't felt in 6 years, not since Vivian died. It was the feeling of being needed, of mattering to someone, of having a purpose beyond making money and building companies. "I'll take emergency custody," he said again, more firmly this time. "Whatever paperwork needs to be filed, whatever background checks need to be done, whatever it takes. I'll do it. Just please don't separate these children and put them in foster care with strangers. They've been through enough trauma tonight." Officer Martinez looked at him for a long moment. She studied his face, then looked down at the 3 children, then back at Thaddeus. Finally, she nodded slowly. "All right," she said. "We'll make some phone calls. Given the time of night and the special circumstances, we might be able to arrange something temporary. But you'll be under supervision. Social services will be checking on you. Do you understand?" "Yes," Thaddeus said. "I understand. Thank you." 20 minutes later, Thaddeus was sitting in the back seat of Officer Martinez's warm police car. The 3 children sat beside him, crowded close together. They still weren't speaking. The car radio crackled to life, and Martinez's partner's voice came through from the Riverside Motel. "We found the mother. Female, early 30s, matches the description of Aloan Ashby. She's unconscious on the motel room floor. There are empty pill bottles all around her, at least 6 or 7 different bottles. This looks like an intentional drug overdose, not an accident. Paramedics are here now working on her. She's still alive, but barely. They're getting her ready to transport to St. Mary's Hospital." In the back seat, Cressida immediately started rocking again, faster and harder than before. Marlowe began his repetitive words, "Mummy's gone, Mummy's gone, Mummy's gone." Dashiell reached into his denim jacket pocket and pulled out a small sketchbook and a pencil. His hands were shaking, but he started drawing on the paper. Thaddeus watched as the boy's hands moved across the page. Despite the shaking, despite the tears still running down his face, Dashiell drew with incredible precision and detail. The picture showed a woman lying on the floor. Her body was surrounded by small circles that must have been pills. Dark scribbles covered the space around her, like the darkness was swallowing her up. It was a devastating image, drawn by a 5-year-old child who had just watched his mother walk away to die. "She's not gone," Thaddeus said softly. He surprised himself with how certain and strong his voice sounded. "Your mummy is very sick right now, but the doctors are helping her. They're taking her to the hospital where they have medicine and machines that will make her better." "Will she die?" Cressida asked. She stopped rocking for just a moment and turned to look directly at Thaddeus. "Is our mummy going to die and never come back?" The question hung in the cold air of the police car. Thaddeus felt like someone had punched him in the stomach. The question brought back memories he had tried hard to forget. Memories of sitting in a different hospital 6 years ago, holding Vivian's hand as it grew colder and colder. Memories of doctors telling him there was nothing more they could do. Memories of going home to an empty house where a nursery sat waiting for a baby who would never sleep in it. "No," Thaddeus said firmly. He made his voice as strong and sure as he could. "She's not going to die. I promise you that. The doctors will save her. Even if I have to pay for every specialist in the city, even if I have to move heaven and earth, I will make sure that promise comes true," he thought to himself. St. Mary's Hospital emergency room was the worst possible place for 3 autistic children. The fluorescent lights on the ceiling buzzed with a constant humming sound that seemed to get inside your head. The intercom system kept crackling to life with announcements. "Dr. Phillips to emergency room 3. Dr. Phillips to emergency room 3. The smell of strong cleaning chemicals and antiseptic burned in the nose and throat. Cressida put both hands over her ears again and curled up into a tight ball on one of the hard plastic waiting room chairs. Marlowe retreated completely into silence. He stared straight ahead at the white wall, not blinking, not moving, like his mind had gone somewhere far away where nothing could hurt him. Dashiell sat on another chair and drew picture after picture in his sketchbook. Every single picture was the same: a woman lying down, surrounded by pills and darkness. He drew it over and over and over again. A nurse in blue scrubs walked over to where they were sitting. She was carrying a clipboard with a lot of papers attached to it. "Mr. Crane?" she asked. Thaddeus stood up. He kept one hand on Dashiell's shoulder. The boy didn't pull away or flinch at the touch, which Thaddeus thought was a good sign. A small miracle, really. "Yes, I'm Thaddeus Crane," he said. "We're going to need you to fill out emergency guardianship forms," the nurse explained. She handed him the clipboard. "Social services has been notified about the situation. They're sending someone over here to talk to you." Thaddeus took the clipboard and nodded. "What about the mother? What's Aloan Ashby's condition? Is she going to survive?" The nurse's expression became more serious. "She's in critical condition, but she's stable for now. The doctors are pumping her stomach to get the drugs out of her system. It looks like she took a very large overdose of prescription anxiety medication. She must have been saving up pills for a while to have that many." The nurse paused and looked at the papers on her clipboard. "There's something else." She left another note in her coat pocket. This one was addressed to the hospital staff. It specifically requested that if she didn't survive, her children should be given to the father she never told about them. "Does that mean anything to you, Mr. Crane?" Thaddeus shook his head, confused. His forehead wrinkled as he tried to understand. "No, I've never met this woman before tonight. I don't understand what that means." But even as he said the words, something started nagging at the edge of his memory. Something from a long time ago. Something he had tried very hard to forget. Grief counseling. 6 years ago, right after Vivian died, there had been a support group for people who had lost their spouses or partners. And there had been a woman there, a volunteer who helped coordinate the group. A woman with sad green eyes who had lost someone she loved too. But no, that couldn't be. That was impossible. That was just one night. One terrible night when two broken people had reached out to each other in the dark and made a mistake born of grief and loneliness and desperation. Before Thaddeus could think about it more, a social worker arrived. She was a middle-aged Asian woman with black hair starting to turn gray. Her eyes looked exhausted, like she had seen too many sad situations and not enough happy endings. Her name tag said, Mrs. Chen. Mrs. Chen looked around at the scene quickly, taking everything in. 3 autistic children clearly in crisis. A mother in the intensive care unit from a suicide attempt. A wealthy stranger in an expensive suit claiming he wanted emergency custody. "This is highly irregular, Mr. Crane," Mrs. Chen said. Her voice was not unkind, but it was firm and professional. "Everything about tonight is irregular," Thaddeus replied. He gestured at the 3 children. "But these children have very special needs. They're autistic. They're traumatized. They can't just be placed anywhere. I have the resources and knowledge to care for them properly. I can provide specialized care that a regular foster home can't offer." Mrs. Chen studied Thaddeus's face for a long time. Then she looked down at the 3 children. She noticed that Cressida had stopped rocking and was now leaning against Thaddeus's side. She saw that Marlo was watching Thaddeus very carefully with an intense focus he hadn't shown anyone else. She saw that Dashiell had drawn a new picture, different from all the others. This picture showed 4 stick figures standing together, holding hands. "Temporary custody only," Mrs. Chen finally said. 72 hours. 3 days. After that, we'll reassess the situation and decide what's best for the children. You'll have daily check-ins with social services. Someone will come to your home every single day. Do you agree to these terms?" "Yes," Thaddeus said immediately. "Absolutely. Whatever you need." Mrs. Chen nodded and started filling out paperwork on her clipboard. "All right then. Let's get this process started." Thaddeus's apartment was in a luxury high-rise building on Lakeshore Drive with a beautiful view of Lake Michigan. The penthouse had been designed specifically for a successful bachelor who lived alone. Everything was glass, steel, and hard marble surfaces. The style was minimalist and modern. Every piece of furniture was expensive and uncomfortable. The whole place was sterile and cold and perfect. It was absolutely, completely wrong for 3 autistic children in crisis. The moment Thaddeus opened the door and led the children inside, complete chaos erupted. Cressida took 3 steps into the living room, saw her reflection in the enormous floor-to-ceiling windows, and started screaming. She screamed like someone was hurting her. "There are other children in the walls," she shrieked. "There are children trapped in the walls. I can see them. They're staring at me." Marlowe looked around at the huge open floor plan where every room connected to every other room with no doors or walls to separate them. There were no boundaries, no clear spaces, no way to tell where one room ended and another began. His eyes went wide with panic. He started running frantically from room to room, his feet slapping on the cold marble floor. He ran in circles, faster and faster, like he was looking for something he couldn't find. Dashiell walked straight to the middle of the living room, dropped to his knees on the hard marble floor, and began banging his forehead against the stone. The sound was horrible, a dull thudding sound. Bang, 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 over and over again. "Stop. Please stop." Thaddeus dropped to his knees beside Dashiell. He tried to put his hands between the boy's head and the floor to protect him. But Dashiell was surprisingly strong for such a small child. He fought against Thaddeus, trying to keep banging his head. His small body was all tense muscles and desperate energy. Across the room, Cressida's screams got louder and more high-pitched. She backed up against a wall and slid down to the floor, her hands pressed hard over her ears, her eyes squeezed shut. Marlowe started his echolalia again, but this time the words were different. "Too big, too big, too big, too big." He said it over and over in that flat, mechanical voice while he kept running in circles. Thaddeus felt his own chest getting tight. His heart was racing. Panic was rising up inside him like water filling a sinking ship. "I can't do this. I don't know how to do this. These children need their mother. These children need someone who knows what they're doing. These children need help that I don't know how to give them." What was I thinking? I'm just one person. I'm just a businessman who knows about technology and money. I don't know anything about children, especially children with special needs. I'm going to fail them. I'm going to fail them just like I failed Vivian. Just like I failed our daughter who died before she could live. And then, completely unexpectedly, Thaddeus broke. 6 years of grief came crashing down on him all at once. Grief for Vivian, his beautiful wife who he would never see again. Grief for the daughter he had never gotten to meet, never gotten to hold, never gotten to watch grow up. Grief for the family he had lost. Grief for all the years he had spent alone, building walls around his heart so high and thick that nothing could get in to hurt him again. Thaddeus sank all the way down to the cold marble floor beside Dashiell. He pulled his knees up to his chest, put his face in his hands, and began to cry. These weren't quiet, dignified tears. These were deep, wrenching sobs that shook his whole body. These were the tears he had held back for 6 years. These were the tears he had never let himself cry because crying meant admitting that he was broken, that he was hurting, that he was human. The apartment fell silent. Slowly, gradually, Dashiell stopped banging his head against the floor. His small body relaxed just a little bit. Cressida's screams faded away until they were just whimpers, then those faded too. Marlowe stopped running in circles and stood still in the middle of the room. All 3 triplets turned to stare at the strange man who had taken them in. This powerful, wealthy stranger who lived in a huge apartment like a palace. This man who wore expensive suits and could make the police listen to him. This man who now sat on his expensive floor, crying like a lost child himself. The children had never seen a grown-up cry like that before. They had seen their mother cry, but she always tried to hide it. She cried quietly in the bathroom with the door closed. But this man wasn't hiding. He was just sitting there on the floor, crying openly, not trying to stop or hold it back. Cressida was the first one to move. She got up from where she was pressed against the wall. She crawled slowly across the marble floor toward Thaddeus. When she reached him, she pressed her small body against his side, the same way she had pressed against her brother and sister on the cold street. Then Marlowe walked over slowly. He sat down on Thaddeus's other side. He didn't say anything. He just sat there, close but not touching. Finally, Dashiell crawled over too. He sat down in front of Thaddeus. His hands had stopped their frantic flapping. He just sat quietly. The 4 of them sat together on the floor of the dark penthouse as the snow kept falling outside the big windows. For broken people who had all lost something important. For people who didn't really know each other, but who somehow understood each other's pain. They sat together in silence, finding a strange kind of comfort in their shared suffering. 3 days passed. They were the strangest 3 days of Thaddeus's life. He had moved the children out of the guest room with its hard furniture and bright lights. Instead, he had ordered weighted blankets that were supposed to feel like a gentle hug. He bought soft lamps that gave off warm, dim light instead of harsh brightness. He had his assistant purchase dozens of soft pillows and plush rugs to cover the cold marble floors. He learned which foods each child could tolerate. Cressida would only eat foods that were white or beige. Marlowe needed his food arranged in separate sections that didn't touch each other. Dashiell couldn't handle any food with a mushy texture. Thaddeus worked from home, which he almost never did. He took phone meetings while sitting on the floor building block towers with Dashiell. He reviewed contracts while Marlowe lined up toy cars in precise rows. He approved million-dollar deals while Cressida rocked beside him, sometimes leaning against his shoulder. On the afternoon of the third day, while all 3 children were napping in the transformed guest room, Thaddeus's phone rang. The screen said St. Mary's Hospital and showed Dr. Reeves's name. Dr. Reeves was the head of the emergency department. Thaddeus answered immediately. "This is Thaddeus Crane." "Mr. Crane, this is Dr. Reeves. We need to discuss something about the children's medical workup. There's been an unexpected development. A very unexpected development." Thaddeus felt his whole body go tense. His blood felt like it turned to ice in his veins. "What kind of development? Are the children sick? Did you find something wrong?" No, nothing like that. The children are physically healthy," Dr. Reeves said quickly. "But there's something else. Something we discovered." He paused for a long moment. "Mr. Crane, are you sitting down right now?" "Just tell me what's going on," Thaddeus said. His hand gripped the phone so hard his knuckles turned white. "Please, just tell me." "All right. Standard procedure when children are abandoned is to do genetic testing. We do this for medical history purposes. We need to know if they have any genetic conditions, any inherited diseases, anything that might affect their health care. The DNA test results came back this morning." Another long pause. "Mr. Crane, according to the genetic testing, the triplets share 50% of their DNA with you. That means there's only one biological explanation. You're their biological father." The phone nearly slipped out of Thaddeus's hand. He grabbed it with both hands to keep from dropping it. "That's impossible," he said. His voice came out as barely a whisper. I don't understand. I've never even met their mother before." But even as he said the words, the memory came flooding back with brutal, painful clarity. 6 years ago. The Grief Counseling Support Group. It was about 3 months after Vivian died. 3 months after he had held his stillborn daughter in his arms for the only time, had kissed her tiny cold forehead, had said goodbye to a child who never got to live. He was drowning in grief and guilt and pain so deep he couldn't see any way out. There had been a woman at the Grief Counseling Group. She wasn't a regular member. She was a volunteer coordinator, someone who helped organize the meetings and set up the chairs and made sure there was coffee. She had sad green eyes and light brown hair. She had told him, during a break, that she had lost her fiancé in a car accident 2 years before. She understood loss. She understood pain. After one meeting, she had offered to give him a ride home because it was raining and he had walked there. But they hadn't gone to his home. They had gone to her small apartment instead. 2 people drowning in grief, reaching out to each other in the dark, looking for any kind of comfort, any kind of connection that would make them feel less alone for just one night. He had left before morning. He had been overwhelmed with guilt and shame. He had felt like he had betrayed Vivian's memory. He had never gone back to the Grief Counseling Group. He had never gotten the woman's name. He had tried very hard to forget that night ever happened. "Eloan," Thaddeus whispered into the phone. His throat felt tight. "Her name is Eloan. She was the volunteer coordinator at the Grief Counseling Group. Just once. He couldn't finish the sentence. "She's been awake and stable for about 24 hours now," Dr. Reeves said carefully. His voice was gentle and professional. "She's in the psychiatric ward under observation. She's asking to see you, Mr. Crane. She says she needs to talk to you. She says she's sorry that she never told you about the children." Thaddeus's mind was reeling. He couldn't think straight. For 6 years, he had been a father and didn't know it. For 5 years, these 3 children had been alive in the world, growing up, learning to talk and walk, living their lives, and he had known nothing about them. Eloan had been pregnant with triplets, had given birth to them, had raised them alone for 5 years, and he had never known. I'll come to the hospital, Thaddeus said. His voice sounded strange to his own ears, like someone else was talking. I'll be there in an hour. The psychiatric ward was quieter than the emergency room. The lights were softer. The walls were painted in calming colors instead of stark white. Everything was designed to be less stressful, less overwhelming. Eloan Ashby lay in a hospital bed in a private room. Her wrists were wrapped in white bandages where she had been hooked up to IVs. Her face was so thin it looked like skin stretched over bone. Her light brown hair was spread out on the pillow, dull and lifeless. She had dark circles under her eyes that looked like bruises. She was beautiful, but in the way that broken things are sometimes beautiful. All sharp edges and barely contained sorrow. When she saw Thaddeus walk through the door, tears immediately started streaming down her face. She didn't make any sound. The tears just ran down her cheeks in a steady stream. I tried so hard, Eloan whispered. Her voice was hoarse and rough, probably from having her stomach pumped. I tried so hard for 5 years. I watched you on the news sometimes. I saw your company growing bigger and bigger. I saw you getting richer and more successful. I read articles about you in business magazines. You were building this huge empire, this amazing life. And you had lost everything when your wife and baby died. You had suffered so much already. I just couldn't bring myself to give you 3 more children to worry about. Especially not children like them. Especially not broken children. They are not broken. Thaddeus's voice came out hard as steel, but underneath there was something gentle, something protective. Don't you ever call them that again. Do you hear me? You don't understand, Eloan sobbed. Now she was crying harder, her whole body shaking. I worked 3 jobs to try to support them. 3 jobs. I worked at a nursing home during the day. I cleaned offices at night. I worked weekends at a grocery store. I needed the money for their specialized therapy. Do you know how much autism therapy costs? Do you know how much sensory equipment costs? How much special food costs when they can only eat certain things? How much special schools cost? She took a shaky breath and continued. It was never enough. The money was never enough. The time was never enough. I was never enough. I couldn't eat because I was giving them my food. I couldn't sleep because I was working all night and taking care of them all day. I kept failing them. Every single day I failed them a little bit more. I couldn't give them what they needed. I couldn't be the mother they deserved. Thaddeus pulled a chair over to the side of her hospital bed and sat down. He looked at her carefully. Really looked at her. He could see now the woman from 6 years ago, the one with sad green eyes at the grief counseling group. She was still in there, underneath all the pain and exhaustion and suffering. Eloan, he said quietly, you raised 3 extraordinary children completely alone for 5 years. You kept them alive. You kept them safe. You got them therapy even though it meant you couldn't eat. You worked yourself to exhaustion for them. That's not failing. That's surviving. That's being the strongest person I've ever met. I tried to kill myself, Eloan said. Her voice was flat and dead. I abandoned them in a snowstorm on a street corner. What kind of mother does that? A mother who is drowning, Thaddeus said. A mother who thought her children would be better off without her than with her. You weren't thinking clearly. You were sick. Your mind was sick from depression and exhaustion and trauma. I see you in their faces every single day, Eloan whispered. She looked up at the ceiling, tears still running down to wet the pillow. Cressida has your determination. When she decides she wants something, she doesn't give up, just like you. Marlowe has your analytical mind. He can solve puzzles that children twice his age can't figure out. He thinks in patterns and systems, just like you do. And Dashiell has your eyes, Thaddeus finished softly. He had noticed. In the 3 days he had spent with the children, he had noticed. When Dashiell looked up at him, it was like looking in a mirror. I wanted to tell you, Eloan said. So many times over the years, I wanted to tell you. I would see you on TV or in the newspaper, and I would think, he deserves to know he has children. They deserve to know their father. But then I would remember how destroyed you were when Vivian died. I was there that night at the grief group when you talked about it. You said you felt like you had died too. You said you didn't know how to keep living in a world without her and without your baby. How could I add to that pain? How could I give you 3 children who would need so much from you? Thaddeus reached out slowly and took Eloan's hand. Her hand was small and cold and felt fragile, like it might break if he squeezed too hard. Eloan, listen to me. Those children, Cressida and Marlowe and Dashiell, they're ours. They belong to both of us. They're our children. Mine and yours together. And we're going to figure this out. Together. Do you understand me? You're not alone anymore. You don't have to carry this by yourself. For the first time since he walked into the room, Aloan smiled. It was a tiny smile, barely there, but it was real.